You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Nikki Sims. I'm an exclusive coach at Barbell Logic, and I'm also the Chief Experience Officer. And I'm here with CJ Gocher, who's the director of the Barbell Academy. Hello.
Ahoy.
It's an urge to say the same thing, but I'm like, nope, that's CJ saying. I'm not going to say it back.
Do it.
Hola.
Do it now.
Well, thanks everybody for listening today. And thanks CJ for being here. This is going to be a little bit different in the sense that I'm actually going to interview CJ about a hobby and a sport that he's really into. And it fits along with the theme of our month here at Barbell Logic, which is conditioning. We know that's a really important topic. It's something that everybody wants to get into at some point. And yet, conditioning, there are a lot of ways to make doing repetitive motions difficult. So what's the use of it? When should you do it? How should you do it? And how much? We're going to be talking about that a lot this month. But specifically with CJ today, CJ is really into rucking, which could you give us the definition of rucking, please, CJ?
As a workout strategy right now, as a tool right now, rucking, you put a backpack on your back, you put a weight in your backpack, and you go for a walk with a purpose. That's pretty much it as it's defined.
Awesome. So it's different than walking with your dog, but if you put a weight in a backpack and then put the backpack on your back and had your dog, would that count as rucking with your pup?
That a pup ruck. Yeah, we've actually and we do that. Like, there are community events where it's all skill levels, all ranges, where we'll come out and some people won't have a bag at all. Some people will have 50 pounds or a sandbag that they're training for an event or something, and some people will have their kid on their shoulders. Like, that is nice. That's the weight. So it's actually one advantage. And when we talk about conditioning in general, flexibility is so important as a criteria. It's advantage of any activity if you can scale it to where you're at. And that's one of the ways we do.
I like that. So I want to get a glimpse of what your kind of training menu looks like. You barbell train and you ruck. What is that like and what else is there?
So right now, and this is true as of 3 weeks ago. So I did a Go Ruck event, an HTB, a heavy tough basic, which is a 48-hour event. And I was specifically training for that. And so my training looked different leading into that. Right now, my training is 4 days a week of barbell training. 2 of those days are heavy. 2 of those days are relatively light because I have to do them at the YMCA, which has different equipment and setup and things. I have one longish or longer cardio day, which I usually apply to rucking, occasionally running, but right now it's just rucking is a lot easier on my knees. And on two of those strength days, there'll be some kind of tight conditioning, 5 to 15 minutes, high intensity but short.
Okay, man. So that is a full week of training.
It ends up being, and a lot of it's been adapting. Like I said, I was planning what is the post HTB going to look like for a couple of weeks before then. And these last 3 weeks have been figuring out how to make that happen. Like, a lot, it looked different 2.5 weeks ago. Yeah, because it became, okay, here was the plan. And then I got to the end of the week and I look back at it and I'm like, I originally had 2 long cardio days planned. And I'm like, this doesn't work with Dylan, my kid, my toddler, and how to make that happen. Tuesday and Thursday, we can get to the YMCA and they've got childcare. And so and the core, the intent of where I'm going with the program had to hold, but it had to bend towards, my life as a primary care provider for this tiny human.
The human who needs you. Yeah. Yeah, that's always, I think, an interesting conversation point when someone wants to do conditioning is when can you fit it in? Where can you do it? How much can you consistently dedicate to it? And one great thing about the conditioning that you can do that's effective is that it's short, like those days that you can tack on at the end of your lifting where it's 5 to 15 minutes, just get uncomfortable in a really short amount of time. And that works well. But what made you want to start doing the longer endurance conditioning?
So it was, for me, it's coming back to longer. So in high school, I was a cross country runner, the standard distance 5K, but I would also do some 10Ks and never terribly long. When I was at the Naval Academy, I wanted to go into NSW, Naval Special Warfare. I wanted to be a SEAL. And as they say, as they said back then, like being a SEAL is 6 miles just to get breakfast. Like when it comes to getting to the training location and then getting back to food, you're running 6 miles a day, not counting all the other beatdown and things like that's the bare minimum. And so it clicked in my head like, I need to be able to go long. Going long has to be a non-issue. So as I was preparing to apply and aiming for selection, I was aiming at longer events. Some of those a lot of those were self-imposed, a 20-mile here, like a 20-mile run or a 10 or 10, 20, 30-mile ruck. At one point did a half Ironman, and a lot of those were just they were sort of conditioning and experience events for that goal. Now
Okay.
I went. At some point, when I realized I wasn't going to make SEALs, like that was no longer a career possibility, I looked back and I'm like, I'm tired of being the strongest weak guy in the room, like the strongest skinny guy. Like, sure, I can run for miles, but I was still getting flattened by like a 315 squat, like really bad. So I dedicated some time to strength, and for a while there, I managed the balance. Until there reached a point when I stopped managing the balance, and I'm like, I don't have to run anymore. Like maybe I could, I'll pull that off the schedule. After 4 years of that, of doing no dedicated conditioning, all of that built, accrued practice and adaptation was gone, effectively. It does not stay forever. And it does not come back in 2 weeks. It does not come back in a month. It doesn't recur quickly. So one day I'm like, I just want to take a jog. I go for 2 miles, and about 1.5 miles in at a really slow pace. It was like 9.5-minute miles, 10-minute miles, sprained my calf so bad that I can't run for 3 months.
Oh man.
It was the
I bet
classic.
that was like a devastating moment of, this is where I am at in my life right now.
A little bit. It's the classic weekend warrior midlife crisis moment of like, this was such a non-training event compared to what I could do. I literally used to be able to get off the couch and run a marathon. I could, like, that capacity was there. And now I get off the couch and run 1.5 miles and I break.
Get hurt.
And that was a mental click for me that I wasn't going to be a competitive strength athlete. I had gotten to a 560 deadlift. Like, there was no adding 5 pounds to that was not, it was a marginal change. It was an interest, but I'm not a power lifter. Like, it's not going to change my life. Being able to run with my toddler, who will, by the way, will hop on his little pedal bike, his little balance bike, and go for 4 miles.
Yeah.
Being able to keep up with him is life-changing.
Yeah.
So that was a big priority shift last year.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back really quick. You said that at one point you couldn't maintain the balance of strength and conditioning. How did you realize that you couldn't maintain that balance? What did that feel and look like?
That's a great question. I didn't realize it. It happened. So as each time, at the time I was working at CrossFit 760 and I was working a lot of hours. I was with Barbell Logic. I was working at CrossFit 760. I was doing, I was a teacher, one of the cohort leaders at the Barbell Academy, and working at an in-person gym. As you know, there's not just the gym. We had 4 locations. So there's transit between locations. Oh, yeah. And when I counted gray time, I was probably working 11, 12-hour days. Mm. Gray time and online time and all that kind of, how productive is it? But it's 12 hours. I can't really do anything else. And so as this time just expanded, my priorities just a little bit got pulled off here and a little bit got pulled off here and a little bit got pulled off here. And maybe I don't need that. And because I didn't really have a clear concept of what I wanted or what I was training for, then it was just whatever was most convenient at the time and whatever was most likable, I guess, whatever I liked, at that moment which was lifting or something CrossFit-y. And then next thing I know, I don't even realize that over the course of a year or 2 years, I have not stepped on and done anything for more than 10 minutes straight in almost 2 years.
So then 4 years later, you have the realization that you're like, I need this in my life, and yet I can't just throw it back into the mix. So was there anything in addition to wanting to be able to run along with Dylan? Was there another health interest that made you want to incorporate it back in? Or was it that old kind of, I want to be a SEAL and be able to, run 6 miles for breakfast? Did that kind of creep into the picture?
I'm sure there's a little bit of that midlife crisis. Like I'm gonna reclaim, my old glory. But I'm sure there was a little bit more of, wow, I at least don't want to be this fragile. Because as much as we say like strength builds resilience at lifting heavy things. Like there is also the resilience of repeat activity. That is a separate task. And I was able to maintain that with 1 or 2 days of conditioning work when I was, staff with SEAL Team 8, when I was working at the CrossFit gym for those first few years. But it doesn't retain when you don't do anything at all. So that was probably a big part of it. Was not being as fragile. It was just a recognition like, oh, I have let this really important physical capacity just degrade to nothing. And second, I realized that if I didn't have competitive aspirations for bodybuilding or powerlifting or something strength lifting focused, then, and I didn't necessarily have competitive aspirations, period, then what is the ready state? What puts me in a position where when I get a fire under my ass and I decide I want to do something different, and I decide I want to pursue something, what puts me in the best position to be able to flex to whatever that new thing is? And going over a whole lifetime of physical activity, I'm like, it's not being able to do a 600-pound deadlift and break on a 1.5 mile run. Like it's being able to do for me right now, it would be doing a 500-pound deadlift and being able to run 5 miles without having to worry about breaking.
Yeah. It sounds like you're really able to see that if you wanted to go intense in one area, it's a trade-off. Like if you wanted to fully pursue the 600-pound deadlift, it's a trade-off. If you wanted to fully pursue bodybuilding, it's a trade-off. And I think that's an important realization, is that after a certain point, it becomes a specialization.
After a certain point, yes. And I think I think a lot of people do this, and I know I certainly did, which is getting in the trap of whenever I was at my most fit, what was the recovery capacity, what was the time capacity, and that was really just after I left the Naval Academy, like when I had that real balance that I could focus on training. Applying that is like the baseline. This is what I should be able to do. And I had this thought process, and I think it's true. There are hybrid athletes who have done this. It's the 606, the 505, a 500-pound deadlift and a 5-minute mile. 606, or I think Fergus Crawley did a 1,200-pound total on the same day that he did a 12-hour Ironman. Like these kind of hybrid challenges. And I told myself, or I thought to myself, it was a feeling, it intuited well that I still had that same recovery capacity and time to do that, to achieve that. And so I was all gung-ho from the very beginning. It's like, yeah, I'm going to get back down to a 5:15, just like I used to be at, and that kind of thing. And it took the reality of having a toddler to remind me, like, oh yeah, maybe the fact that I keep getting reds, missed workouts, the fact that these keep and these are lifestyle interruptions, maybe I need to reset and rethink. Yes, there's a trade-off between a 600-pound deadlift and a 6-minute mile. There's also, and maybe it could be achieved in a different galaxy, a different universe, a different a multiverse of CJs. But in this universe, that's not happening today.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to realize, because then you realize also what you can do.
Yeah. And right now, I don't have a goal. I don't have a big event that I'm training for. I don't have a target. So I have this imaginary, it's a guiding light, which would be being able to do a 600-pound deadlift, a 6-minute mile, and 600 chin-ups in 60 minutes. Like
600 chin-ups in 60 minutes.
So 10 chin-ups every minute on the minute in 60 minutes. All three of those are very difficult challenges. But when I think to myself, A, I would flip and love to be able to do that. Like, that would be exciting. And B, the balance of capacities that I want to have, plus movements I enjoy. I love the deadlift. I actually enjoy running. I love the chin-up. So my training is moving me in that direction, but I don't have a deadline for it. I may never hit that, but that's a guiding light that helps me make priorities and make choices instead of like finding myself 2 years down the line, like, oh, I can't run anymore.
Okay, I dig that. You've isolated the things that you enjoy doing that appeal to you, and you've created a kind of a carrot that's really freaking hard. So you will keep pushing yourself. And you do well in that kind of environment. That's rad. So how did you start to add it back in after you hobbled back home? What was the idea after that?
Yeah. Well, so going to your first point, your very first question about rucking and what rucking is, rucking was my first choice. I had some experience with it. I had done a few events with Go Ruck, the company that ran the heavy tough basic that I recently did. And I knew the options as a tool, and there's a great ruck club in our local area run by just a fantastic ruck club leader, Jess. So I got in touch with them and I started doing some rucks with them because it provided a near-term event that I could enjoy and do as a community, but also rucking is a transition exercise between walking, which walking is good for you. Like there's no doubt about it. We've seen all the health benefits. I'm not even going to see like everyone, like I feel it's like almost embarrassingly too little. And I'm not ashamed to say like that's a little bit of ego talking, but you toss 30 pounds on your back or 20 pounds or even 10 pounds or whatever, and it feels different. It feels like I'm doing a thing.
You're not just strolling.
Yeah. And so there was a community that was locally that was doing rucking. It was more intense than a walk. It was easier to get up to a good working heart rate. And more importantly, the calf strain, as soon as I would lean forward into the running stride, my calf would be like, no. But rucking didn't bother it.
That's cool.
At all.
So you could walk with your purpose that was towards that kind of big pie in your mind, the 600, 600, 600, and it felt challenging, and it is challenging.
Yeah, it's more challenging. There was I did want to find a community. I recognized this was post-pandemic. This was like 2000 or by 2021, right? Where people are starting to get back out. And I realized how much mentally I had sort of, when it came to training, just kind of collapsed in on myself. And it was no longer, there was nobody there. And I wanted a piece of that too. So all those things together, rucking just seemed like the most viable choice to get back on my feet until that pain went away and I could start incorporating some running, some other things.
Do you think it's rucking specifically is, or I'll ask for I'll throw in the long endurance aspect of it too. Is it more mental than physical?
It's hard to decide, is it more one or the other? For me, it depends. Like getting out the door is often more mental than physical. Just to break away from work, to break away from other priorities and say, no, this is training time and this is important. And then the event itself, let's take the HTB, the heavy tough basic. So the heavy tough basic is a 24-hour event. It is cadre led. So yes, you're going to put a lot of miles on your feet with a 45-pound ruck on your back. But you're also, it's going to be 11 o'clock at night in San Diego with about 50 degrees, 40, at the time, I think it was 47 degrees. And they're going to put you in the ocean is the
Don't
first
they
thing
put you in the ocean like first thing?
Yeah. That was the first thing we did.
So let's get some cold water and sand in all the places. Awesome.
All the places. There's going to be a lot of PT, and along with your rucks, you've got the team has to carry together 80 pound, 100 pound, 120 pound, and there's one 200 pound sandbag along with water and other equipment that you have to carry as a group. So the mileage really doesn't tell it. But on the other, so there was a 24-hour event, then like 3-4 hours break, then a 12-hour event, 3-4 hours break, then a 6-hour event.
Yeah.
And physically, there were like you're moving a lot, you're underweight. But if I had a heart rate monitor on, like as I was checking in on myself, I'd say for 80 to 90% of that event, it was not physically difficult. Just on muscles and on heart rate and that kind of thing. It is wearisome because you feel heavy, like things are just on the bones. It just kind of sucks. And then there's that 15-20% where you're under the 120 pound sandbag with somebody else, or you're doing PT and then you're ramped up. So is it physically challenging? Those peak moments certainly are in those events. And but the bigger challenge, and the reason why, some people quit, is really that mental game of what I'm feeling right now is going to go on forever. It's that catastrophizing. It's all those things, even when we know it's not.
Yeah.
And then that emotional challenge of, as I feel under stress, as I feel like I'm struggling, there's always that thing to be like, what? Like, that guy's failing, that guy's not carrying the sandbag. Like, if only they would do the work, like, we wouldn't all be suffering so bad. That the cadre kind of as well plays with as a dynamic within the group.
Oh,
and you have to
spicy, man.
Yeah, in the sense of, and like, not like they're trying to pit people against each other, but calling out, when the group is starting to space, so you look behind and you see who happens to be behind you at that moment. And you have to, in my opinion, like it is an exercise in stoic feeling, not like I have to be stoic and brace down, but one of the principles in stoicism is what's going to happen. If you know the range of bad things you're going to experience, then you should brace yourself and accept that as part of the game. You know that there will be gray men at an event, people who didn't quite prepare and they're just hanging in there. And you know that there are going to be times when you're not ready to carry the weight, when you struggle to put that weight on your back, or you have to take it off. And that feeling like, oh no, I'm letting my team down because I can't carry 120 pounds for 3 miles, which isn't possible. You're not going to be able to sustain that. And being able to emotionally manage that and be like, wait a minute, that is for me a bigger challenge than walking for that long distance.
So I'm kind of imagining it's really powerful in the moment to know that you have physically prepared yourself enough to believe that you can handle what is thrown at you physically, even though it's really going to push your limits. And you might have a moment of like, is this really my mind failing or is it my body failing? So how did you prepare yourself physically so that you could believe with certainty that you could complete the physical tasks?
So I'll go back to the HTB just because it's in recent memory. There are a couple examples I could apply, but the HTB is probably the best example because it just for recent memory. So I did a schedule event. I did a pre-event that left me enough time to train and prepare for what I learned. It was like 6 months prior. It was a TB. It was just the 12-hour and then the 6-hour event back to back. And I did not do well. So and I recognized, I paid attention. I had a little, a little journal to record what the hell happened. And, I did well physically for the first event, but I did not prepare. I didn't get my gear together. I didn't have a plan in between events. There was a lot of things that happened, and there was some conditioning that I had not, managed right. In that second event, I couldn't put on a 100-pound sandbag. Like for any stretch of time, I could not keep up with the pace of the group with a heavy sandbag on my back for any length of time like I could during the first event. I'm like, that's not acceptable if I'm going to be going for twice that time. So I took my lessons, I took everything, and redesigned the training program, which involved more time under a heavy ruck and more focus on squatting in particular as I evaluated the different lifts that supported me. I'd previously biased a lot more towards the deadlifts just because it's a lot more fun. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, the muscles that were failing were quads and adductors. So, squats had to be a priority. And, making those shifts. But a lot of it was actually gear.
Oh, interesting.
Gear and preparation. And not that the gear is all that important, but that one thing that you don't think of, like chafe powder or, chafe cream that people use that is a non-issue in a 30-minute training ruck or an hour or 2-hour training ruck becomes the issue after 10 hours.
Absolutely. And it's like you can hear about that from other people, or you can have the gift of experiencing it yourself.
And that's the thing too, is the preparatory event not letting myself get my head around the axle like I underperformed. It's like that was a preparatory event. I was there to learn and screw things up. So, okay, here we go. Yeah. It was that way for when I was trying to go SEALs. So there was a SEAL screener. They brought up cadre from the SEAL teams on the East Coast, as well as using, some of the seniors at the school. They took 130 of us and they just beat you down for a long time, plus swimming tests and rucking tests. There was a whole slate of events. And it was a similar thing. The guys who got through it, we started with about 130 and we finished with about 40. You knew they were going to put you in the Severn River. It was in the river in Annapolis in November. There was literally snow on the ground and they're going to put you in the water. And if you didn't get out there and do some workouts in the water or getting wet, then what were you doing? Like you were hoping that the head space would be there when the day showed up. There were swimming training events. So we prepped for those swimming training events and the ones so that I was not a good swimmer. I still wasn't a good swimmer. But if you go in on the day if you know what the challenge is going to be and you haven't tested it, you haven't prepped it, then did you prep for the event?
Yeah. Sounds really important to subject yourself to the challenge to see how you'll do, see what your deficits are, and give yourself a plan to build them up.
And I've completely failed that at times. One day I woke up and I decided I'm just going to do a half Ironman. It was like, oh, it's the Super Frog half Ironman. Sure, yeah, I want to be a SEAL. Half Iron. It doesn't sound too hard. I've done a half marathon. I can definitely swim that. Oh, 56 miles on the bike. Everyone knows how to bike. So I bought a bike. 2 weeks later, there was the race.
Oh my God.
And it just destroyed me. Like I knew in my head, like not preparing for a pinnacle physical event that's going to take 6 hours is like, or more is not a good idea.
So you were at least kind of stoic about that.
And so I don't want to come across as like, oh yeah, I'm always maximally prepared and do all the things. Like hell no, but that's the thing. If you actually care about success of the event, then everything that goes into it, whether it's physical, mental, tactical, technical, like that's the prep.
Yeah. Love it. Man, you and I are different.
Well, tell me.
I
what do you mean?
Do the thing that involves getting into cold water and running for long distances. I'm glad you exist, and I'm glad I don't have to do what you like to do. I was curious, what is the most important gear for rucking?
So that's a great question. So in general, it depends on the length and it depends on, what you're going to be doing. Having a ruck that's going to hold up, having a ruck that like the Go Ruck, rucks, if you're going to commit to like putting heavy weights in the bag that aren't going to deform the straps or anything like that, those hold up pretty well. You're having pants that aren't going to break down, having boots that are boots or shoes that are comfortable. I actually prefer shoes generally over boots. There are some hiking shoes that are fantastic. Salomon, Merrell makes them. And if you're a ruck at any length, the clothes on your body and the bag on your back are kind of key. There reaches a tipping point for me somewhere around 10 to 12 hours of event, maybe even 6 hours, or longer than that, where food becomes you need to have food on you. It doesn't have to be like anything fancy. Literally M&Ms, can do the trick. I ate nothing. I finished out our house's Halloween candy on that HTB. Like that
Perfect.
was Halloween candy and trail mix. Like that was the core of my food.
If you wanted to lure me into rucking, that would be how to lure me into
right?
rucking.
Come here, eat all the candy.
Trail mix and Halloween candy.
Having electrolytes really helped with cramping. I didn't manage that too well in the heavy, fixed it about 2 or 3 hours in, and then it was never a problem for the rest of the event. And anything like chafing wise to me was actually like a game changer. Like that can honestly break a game, or blister management, because if you can't, stay on your feet between a 24-hour event, a 12-hour event, you're more likely to quit.
For sure.
The thing is, though, and I talked to this, I'm no event master. There are guys who did this event. There was one guy who did this event. This was his 4th time on this HTB, like these cadre, these hills, like this event. And he had done other HTBs before. And, one of the things he was telling me was it's personalized. Like he by prepping for the event in smaller things and then by doing them, he has his own custom gear setup, and he knows what he needs, what's going to fail. Like there was no surprises for him.
That's cool, man. He must have a lot of fun.
And I'll tell you, strength is important, obviously. Like strength is key, and as a core physical attribute, it really does support and reinforce all the other things we do. This guy cannot deadlift 500 pounds. Like that's not, in his scope, that's not what he does. But he could put 120 on his back, and Jesus, he is going with 120 pounds on his back faster than many people on the line. Other people who are carrying just like water jugs or not carrying anything, and he is still at the front of the line. Like there are event specific adaptations that you put in the hours and you just excel. Like this is what you do.
That's rad. What's been what has doing this taught you about yourself?
Good question. Unwinding a lot of expectations around, I need to be prioritizing strength. Like, oh, I don't need to be doing cardio. Like nobody needs to do cardio. Like that's, and realizing that was a story I had told myself that wasn't serving me, and unpacking why I started telling myself that story to begin with. It kind of clicked for me. It was a Facebook reminder. It was one of those like this day in your memory. It showed me a picture of me smiling ear to ear doing the silly Spartan race thing in one of the older Go Rucks. And I'm like, I do enjoy that. Like it's silly, but I really do enjoy that. So why did I stop?
Yeah.
A lot of that has been unpacking and repacking priorities in this last 2 years. Over not just conditioning as a thing and, and how that balances out with strength, but also family time. If you're going to prepare for an Ironman, reading the works of Ironman coaches and triathletes, 15 hours is like a minimum for a lot of these guys who want to be even age group competitive. Like you don't see a lot of these guys putting in less than 15 hours a week on the bike, in the pool, in the water. And, it was looking at myself and going, do I have the time, and do I have the, I'll spare the language, the give a craps to put in that kind of effort for an endurance event.
And what's something that you're most proud of since you got back into it?
It's since the calf strain, in the realization like, oh, I'm a lot more fragile than I thought I was. Like, sure, I can squat 4 plates, deadlift, 4 plus, deadlift 5 plus, and I'm fragile. The other day, it was a few months ago, like I said, it was my kid on his pedal bike, and he just got the zoomies, and I started my watch, my little GPS watch, and it went for 4.3 miles. And he's
a really long time.
Right. And for most of it, because he's on a pedal bike, for most of it, he's clocking, 9 to 10 minute miles. Like he's keeping me at a shuffle pace, a jog for most of it, except when he stops and, wants to, pick up a stick or whatever. And getting to the end of that, he wanted to go out. So we got to the end of it. And then he turns to me and he goes, uppies? Like, oh, he doesn't want to go back. Mm-hmm. He's too tired. He doesn't plan out the distance. So then putting him on my back, and we walk about 3 miles because it wasn't a straight line. So we walk about 3 miles with him on my back, getting back to the bike, biking home with him, on the bike, and going, I feel okay. Like we went, we did all that. It wasn't, a great feat, but I could be there for him, provide that experience, and I get home and I'm not wasted. I'm not done. Like, life is good.
Yeah. I love that. That's good motivation right there. You get to play, you get to spend time with people who you love, you get to feel good in your body, and it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. You get to be really present.
There was when I was really thinking peak strength training, when I was doing a lot of powerlifting work, and I was trying to do powerlifting meets, I would remember thinking like somebody like, hey, you want to go on a hike? And I would tell myself like, ooh, this is going to interfere with my strength. Yes, like
totally know what you mean.
Like, oh, somebody wants to like, hey, you want to go out on the bike? We haven't, done the bike thing in a while. And I'd be like, no, I've got training tomorrow. And after not just that event with him, but a lot of stuff over the last 2 years, realizing why was I was not a competitive athlete. Why was I making the sacrifices of joyful physical activity for a 5-pound squat increase that, it would take me from 420 to 425? Like, what did that mean for me? That's more what I'm proud of, is making that shift and serving, my family and my goals better than what I was doing before.
Yeah. That's a great spot to be. It's wonderful. To sum it up, what is a piece of advice or two that you would give to someone who's curious about getting into this type of training?
First, treat it.
Who's already lifting.
Yeah, no. And I was about to say an answer as though a lifter were already familiar with lifting and strength. And I'm glad you clarified that, because my first response was going to be, think of it like strength training. In the sense that when you start strength training, you're conservative. You can ramp up kind of quick at the start, right? But you're conservative. You're not familiar with it. You need to ramp up. You need to learn the lay of the land. Like, you need to get a feeling for how your body works at 135, 155, 185, 205, 225. Like, you move different and it feels different until things start getting hard. Don't be afraid to start light. Don't be afraid to ramp up. And pay attention and be learning in the process, just like you would on a linear progression. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's why I'm glad you clarified that, because I recognize not everyone has the experience of going through a linear progression. And in that sense, it's more start lighter than you need to, with the intention, or slower than you need to, or easier than you need to, with the intention for the first month or two, you are training to train. You're still getting out there, but you are adapting yourself and feeling yourself out and figuring what you can do. And that's okay. You're still putting in the miles. You're still doing the work. And the second thing I would say is, unless you have a sport or mission requirement, unless you are doing your conditioning to win, whether that's on the field, on the battlefield, whatever that might be, pick something you love. For the love of God, There is no reason. If you hate running, don't run. If you hate swimming, don't swim. Like, Jesus. And vice versa. Like, there's so many people that are like, I hate doing this. There's so many other things you could do. Vice versa.
You don't have to do it.
Right? And people are like, oh, well, you know, like, but it has to be hard. Like, training has to be hard. That's the wrong way to be hard about it. If I'm 30 minutes into a run and I'm sort of sandbagging it because I hate what I'm doing, or I get in a war canoe with 5 other dudes and I like it. There, by the way, San Diego has a war canoeing club. I didn't know that. But
Of course they do.
Right?
Is it like a Viking thing?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's an outrigger, like, canoe style.
Fantastic.
But if that, like, incites you and inspires you, then you're in 30 minutes in and you're not sandbagging. You're working harder because you love it.
Yeah.
So don't, like, allowing. I joke that if your rating of perceived suck, you know, your RPS is higher than your RPE, you're not going to put out at max effort. You know, you're not going to put in the hours, put in the effort to achieve what you want. So make sure that it sucks for a good reason. Don't indulge in stupid suck.
Yeah.
So that would be it, is be willing to start light, be willing to ramp up, be careful about it, learn your body. And for the love of God, pick something or find something. You can experiment with different things. Pick something you love.
And would you peel back on lifting a little bit as you start to LP conditioning?
Depends. So
Yeah.
it's like, what is the goal and what is the available time?
Yeah.
If you have a competitive event, then of course there is kind of a periodization to it, where in the total off season is a great time to build some strength, especially if you're going to be off. By the time you're getting close to your event, you may only be strength training 1 day a week, 2 days a week tops. If you've got like an endurance event coming up, and it's going to be really low volume, depending on how long the event is, right? And how interfering your running is, or whatever your sport is. But if this is just kind of a maintenance, like steady state, I like lifting and I like this, you know, hiking, I like biking, I like whatever it is, then decide how much progress you need to make. Like, decide how much, you know, and where do I prioritize this way, that way? Do I care? And find something that fits within your lifestyle and do it. If you love doing both, you will get healthy and stronger doing both. Will you get a 600-pound deadlift and a 6-minute mile? Not unless you re-engineer your whole life around training for a while.
And that is a specialty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doing both of those things. Yeah.
But if you just want to enjoy things, stay healthy, stay fit, stay active, you can do both.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Man. Great. That's so cool. I love that you have that in your life right now and that you completed that HTB. That's amazing. Congratulations. And that you have recovered from it. Yeah. Finally.
So
awesome.
it was long enough ago that it was funny. Like, within, I'd say, like 3 days later, I felt, you know, muscularly I'm still sore, but otherwise, you know, I could wake up and tell you, like, I'm just sore. I could go back to training. And I tossed on a heart rate monitor, and this is true. Like, if you do HRV, people who do Ironmans will tell you this. Follow Alan Kozins. I followed him on Twitter, and he does this a lot with his athletes. And they show weird heart rate responses for like 2 or 3 weeks. And sure enough, like a week after my HTB, I would stand up from sitting, and my heart rate would shoot to like 125. Like 120.
To the Matt Reynolds resting heart rate range.
Right? Love you, Matt. And so, like, recovery took, and the same was true of my deadlift. Like, it was weird. I would feel great going into the gym, and then my performance would just be flat for like about 2 weeks. I'd be like, I feel recovered. What happened? So yeah, I feel totally recovered now, but it did take longer than I thought.
Yeah. It's good to know. Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for sharing all that with us. It's really useful. And thanks for giving us a glimpse into what that experience has been like for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for listening. Maybe that'll inspire you to go take a stroll or put a backpack on and take a ruck, or have some interest in something that is fun for you, that allows you to push yourself as much as you want to, but that you also enjoy.
And I'll tell you
Thanks
what,
for listening.
if you have any,
Yeah.
sorry there.
It's okay.
If you have any questions or any thoughts about conditioning in general, a couple places you can find me. The Barbell Logic Academy Instagram, feel free to DM. I tend to be the one on that one. The Facebook group, the Strength Coaches Learning Corner. You can also just DM me on either of those platforms, or email me at cgocher@barbelllogic.com. If you have any thoughts about, how am I balancing strength and conditioning? What options do I have? More than happy to chat. This is something I love.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Take advantage of that resource, guys. And just a little clarification, the Barbell Logic email address is barbell-logic.com.
Right.
C Gocher at barbell-logic.com. I want those to get through. Love it. And if you got something valuable out of this, we would really appreciate a review, and some stars, maybe 5 of them. And thanks for listening, and maybe share this with someone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, CJ.
Out here.